On today's episode of Watch Time, I'll be talking with Jess Adnich from Design Pod Studio and Design Pod Tactical again. And we'll be discussing branding and social media for public safety agencies. What should you do to be able to grow your brand, and what should your presence be on social media? Right after this. Welcome back to Watch Time, everybody. And today we're back again with Jess Adnich from Design Pod Studio and Design Pod Tactical. Jess, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm happy to be here. It's becoming one of my favorite places to be.
Well, I mean, for everybody else, they waited a week, but we've just been rolling right into it.
Yes.
So I'm excited about today's topic. We talked a little bit about this prior to the show starting, and really what our topic today is really talking about branding for public safety agencies. And I know, if you're an agency out there and you're watching this, or if are work for an agency and you're, watching this maybe or listening to this, you're curious about the topic. Branding is more than just for marketing, in my opinion. And I'm curious to get your feedback on this too. But I do feel like, an agency, just like other companies out there, need to have a solid brand because it's how they're perceived by the public, it's how they're perceived by potential employers, and an agent, public safety agency, and even beyond an agency, really, like cities and counties and state organizations, they really all should be adapting this. But for the purposes of this, obviously, public safety. But I just think it's so important, especially today, especially connecting with people. And yeah, I'm gonna be quiet. I'm gonna let you. I'm curious about your perspective on this.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great topic, and it's a very deep topic because there's a lot of different facets to it. But brand does create trust with people. And it's funny that we're talking about this today because I had a conversation with somebody the other day about the phrase perception is reality. And they're like, oh, I hate that, because really perception should be based on facts. And I said, yes, I do. But unfortunately, we live in a society today where people take their reality with the perception that they have. So if they just have a little bit of information, that's their reality. So I think that for agencies that don't have social media, it is a platform, whether you like it or not. It's a part of our culture, it's in our society, but being able to utilize that to grow trust with the community, to educate them on what you do, information, what's going on in the city, that helps build trust, which then changes their perception, their reality into a more positive one. Because let's be real, last couple of years, decade, the way our society relates to law enforcement has really, really gone down. And I think that social media could be a way for a police department to re-engage. It's not like back in the day where police could, openly go on the streets and, talk to people, where that there was a lot of that because it was positive engagement back and forth. Now people are kind of standoffish. So if you can garner that trust back by giving them content, then positive content and education, I think that can be helpful. And I know I touched on a lot of points, but that's
No, I think that's hugely important. I think it's important, one, for all, like police, fire, EMS. I think it's important because you should want your city or your county, your state to have a better understanding of what it is you do. Not only for positive PR, but like if you need a levy or something, if people are voting, it's like anything else. People want to know what they're voting for. And I feel like if they see what you're doing regularly, and you don't have to, and I know some people are going to be like, well, some of the things that we're doing, they're private. We want to keep them, investigations, things like that, or we don't want to put people out there for safety reasons. And I completely understand that. Don't share information that's confidential. Don't talk about open investigations. Don't share private information about your staff. You can
100%.
still share your staff and they could still be part of this, but you don't have to say, this is John Smith and they work here and they live here and they go here and they have
Right?
this family. You don't have to do that, but you could say
Yeah.
this is Officer Smith or this is Firefighter Smith. And they have been working in this community for X number of years. This is what they love about working here. And you can follow them, on our social media, you can see them there, every once in a while when they're working out interacting with the public. And now what's cool about that, in my opinion, is, and this is kind of shifting back to just a public perception is, that celebrity effect. People that see Officer Smith and they're like, oh, it's Officer Smith. That's cool. And then they're out in public and Officer Smith is walking down the street with like a box of ice cream bars and passing them out. You have families and kids that are like, oh, there he is, there he is. And then, like maybe they want to get a picture, like the agency can get a picture, they can share that, but then maybe the community gets a picture like, oh, who do we tag? Tag the agency. We'll share it, or we'll respond to it. And I just think that public interaction, to your point, it's good, it's positive PR. But also it's showing that you're out in the community. It's showing that you're doing your job, because I think the problem is like with not doing these things is it's you're left. I feel like the public is left to interpret what they believe is happening, right? I mean, how many
Well,
times have yeah,
they're filling in their own blanks. If you
yes.
don't give them the information, they will, it's like a really bad Mad Libs. They're going to fill in the blank for you. And unfortunately, I think it's negative more than positive most times.
Well, and I agree. It's like you could live in a community and you never see a police officer. And you're just like, our cops don't do anything, you know.
Right.
But what you don't know is that they're out there being proactive, they're preventing crime from happening, they're out answering calls, because maybe like where you live, there aren't a lot of calls. Maybe the other side of the city, there's a lot of accidents, or there's a lot of, drug activity, or there's just a lot of, maybe there's domestic violence calls on that side of the city, and the side you're on maybe, doesn't have as much going on. It doesn't mean that they're lazy, doesn't mean they're not doing anything. It just means that they're doing their job. I mean, and that's the thing. Like if you do have somebody though that's posting this content, I think that's even great content. Like, an accident occurs, the team gets out there and cleans it up. You just get a shot of a cruiser out there or somebody out there doing their job. Maybe they're doing an accident investigation. Agency responded to here and here yesterday. We cleaned up a 4-car accident. Good job, team. Nobody was hurt. Every only thing we had was some property damage, and everybody's, insurance has been notified. Thanks, and then people know, they know what you're doing. They know that
Yeah.
you're out there, and it doesn't have to be super detailed. You're not going to say who was involved or even have to show the cars. You could just show the officer, sitting in the car doing something on the side of the road. And it could be that simple, but you're putting something out there and people are seeing you.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that all of those are really good bits of information to
Hmm.
share, because I think when agencies hear, oh, we should do social media, they get the picture of during COVID, cops in their badge and belt doing TikTok dances. And that's not what we're talking about here. I mean, I'm
No.
sure if a dance happens or two, that's fine. That gets engagements and it's fun, but every agency for the most part, I'm sure, would have 1 or 2 officers that wouldn't mind stepping up, maybe the canine unit or some other part that they are a good personality,
Hmm.
engaging, able to speak, that can be kind of the face of the agency. Because
Hmm.
I know I personally follow our local PDs down here in Tampa and the surrounding areas, because they do that. They do post, hey, there was this accident, or after a hurricane, these roads are still down. I mean, yeah, the news does it, but I want to follow them because I want to support them,
Yeah.
in that growth. And sometimes I share things as well. And by gaining, by growing that trust with the community, it then opens them up to, I think, help with recruitment,
Yeah. No,
that
that's
people are going to want to maybe apply to your PD because they're able to already see kind of the culture and how
hmm
you guys function without having to wonder.
yes. I think that's a great point, because from a sales perspective, and I'm sure most people have heard this, but people like to buy from people that they know, like, and trust, right? And I feel like from a recruitment perspective, it's very similar. People want to work someplace where they feel like they know the place, they feel like they can trust the people that work there, and they feel like they're a good fit. So it's very similar, that know, like, and trust. And being on social media, I think, helps that. I know when I was looking to go into law enforcement, it's like back in the early 2000s, there wasn't a lot of information out there when I was applying. Like, They're still posting things in newspapers, so I was still following like local newspapers to find when the job postings were. But I would go to the agency's website because I was just curious. And a lot of the things I would look for if they had it available was, how many people work there? What specialized units do they have? Because I'm trying to figure out my future and what I want to do. Maybe I don't want to be on patrol forever. Um, like what area do they cover? So maybe I'll look at a map and just see like, okay, that's kind of cool. Like they have a freeway in their town. Like maybe I could do something on the freeway, like freeway enforcement, do accidents up there, whatever that may be. And then I look at like what can I find about them in the news? Like what are they involved in? What organizations? Are they showing up? Are they getting mad awards because they're catching a lot of people that are drunk drivers? Are they in the news because they're working with task forces? Are they working with the fugitive task force and they're bringing a lot of people in and like serving warrants? Like just trying to get a better idea of who's there. And at that time, it was very hard to get that information. It took a lot of research and like work on my part. But part of what I was looking for was honestly like culture, if I could find it, um, opportunities for advancement down the road. Because I didn't know, do I want to work for a big agency? Do I want to work for a small agency, like a medium-sized agency? Like, what do I want to do? Do I want to work for a city, a county, the state? Do I want to work for like an organization like the Park Service or for a college police department? And it's just they're all so different. And I was trying to figure that out. And that's where, to your point, I think when you're putting out consistent content to the public like that, you can also share recruitment content, and it does give people a better idea of your organization and who works there and what does it look like and what is a day. I mean, that's a great one too that I have seen a few agencies do this. A day in the life. You just follow an officer for their shift and they take
Right.
some photos or get a little bit of video and it's a Instagram story or it's a Facebook story. But I do think that that's real important. And to that point, because I do have a question for you in a second, but I did want to mention we talked about this earlier, and I didn't really jump into this in the beginning. Was if you're an agency and you're really trying to figure out what social media platforms you want to be on, I would really it goes back to the conversation you and I had in the last podcast, just knowing your audience and figuring out like where people are. If more people are on Facebook, I think Facebook's a great place to start. I think that's a great place to have your first channel. I think LinkedIn is a great place to have a second channel because it's great for recruitment. You can encourage your officers if they would like to, or firefighters if they would like to be on LinkedIn and grow their professional network. I feel like that helps them down the road, maybe even on patrol. I mean, I was on LinkedIn when I was full time, and everybody I met in law enforcement I would connect with because you never know when you might need somebody's help in another city or state or county, whatever. I just connect with them. So that's a great place they can connect. You can do recruitment. And then, beyond that, I think beyond those two, you can really decide like, are you seeing a lot of opportunities on X to push information out? Are you seeing is YouTube great? Like to your point, are you putting out more educational content that maybe requires YouTube to do that? Are you wanting to share a lot of photos? I know there's law enforcement communities really big on Instagram, so maybe that's an opportunity. Or someplace you would want to be as well. You can do stories. That could be a great place to do day in the life. So I think like once you establish what channels you want to be on and make sure you pick channels that you can manage, don't do all of them. Still
Agree with
still
that.
grab your handles though. I feel like that's an important thing. Like still go on and get your handles because you don't want somebody to impersonate you. But
And
once you figure
handles,
that out,
yeah, and handles are basically what your username is that
yeah.
people are going to see. And consistency is key. So try to get them all to match or match as closely as possible. Bill, when you were talking
Yeah.
about, when you were looking for jobs, and I know you have a question for me, but
Yeah. No, go ahead.
I think that agencies need to remember at the end of the day, it's a business. And
Hmm.
people looking for employment opportunities are going to do the same thing, whether they're looking for a job at a corporate company or an agency. Like everything that
Hmm.
you listed about what you wanted to know about the agency is everything that someone would look for if they were going to go apply for Vitamix, Nestle, Nike,
Hmm.
Home Depot. You want to know the culture. You want to know what positions are available. All of those things are normal things that human beings look for. So, of course, people applying or interested in law enforcement are going to want to know the same information. Not to mention, the younger generation uses social media.
Hmm.
That's where they go to, for better or worse, to get their information and to stalk. I mean, research people and
Yeah.
companies.
Yeah.
And, and I've said this before in podcasts, whether you're buying a new washing machine or a new car, people do their research and they definitely
Mhm.
do it when they're looking for employment opportunities. You spend the majority of your life at these places. You want to know what you're getting into. And, so I think that they need to really approach it as it is a business. Granted, you might not have the budget of Nike,
Yeah.
clearly not, but you are a business and you're seeking employees. And so you have to look at it that way.
No, I think that's great advice. I think I would almost argue that um for people that are hearing this, like when you go to do research for your job, it's almost as much I feel like the research is as consistent as if you were buying a home or a car, if not more, because of that fact that
Yes.
this is where you're going to be for, and I know some people are probably watching this like, oh no, people like the hop. People may job hop because they made a decision based on the information that was available to them, and they realized like this wasn't my fit.
Or
Like
they were duped. I
yeah,
will, sorry to interrupt you. Like,
oh, you're good.
clearly that's a trigger for me because I hear that a lot about job hopping. And before I got to Mace, which I was at Mace for 6 years before
Hmm.
that, my resume probably looked like I
Hmm.
job chopped. Did I say that backwards? Job hopped. That's funny.
Yeah.
Because I had worked for a company, they declared bankruptcy. My job
Mhm.
was eliminated. I then had a contractor position. So I think the phrase that people like to job hop is a stereotype that,
Yeah.
oh, law enforcement, they're going to jump from agency to agency. Well, you don't know. We're all human beings at the end of the day, and you
Yeah.
have your own personal experience. So if you got into an agency and the position wasn't what you thought it would be, the culture wasn't what it was, there's no growth for you, less pay, more pay, there's an unlimited amount of reasons why someone would want to move from
Yeah.
one position to another.
Well, and I think the important thing with that is realizing that like public safety jobs, um, and beyond public safety, I mean, really government jobs, city jobs, county jobs, anywhere. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're working for the service department, police department, fire department, highway patrol. Like the reality of it is, you know, people, when you put that content out there and people see who you are, it is very important to give the reality of what that job is. And I think I have seen a lot of recruitment material out there. People have posted a day in the life. They've hired companies to come in and put recruitment material together for them. They've taken their own, photos, whatever that may be, or put out their own content, written content, and they embellish a little bit. And I think the key here is I understand you want to get people in those roles. You want to fill those roles. And I totally understand that. The problem is you don't want to fill a role with the wrong fit. This goes back to getting clear on, your audience and your messaging, like you had talked about in the last podcast. Because when you understand who your audience is and you write the messaging for them, they're going to be
Yes.
like, oh my gosh, this is my job. And that it's better to have one or two employees like that are going to stay with you for a long time and going to consistently love being there and just showing up and willing to work the overtime versus having six people and four of them which you've brought in, you've paid to train and get equipment and all that, get them up to date, and then they leave, and then people are, you get people that are upset, and it's like, well, you really have to look at what did you put out there, what did you say this job was. We did a recruitment video last year for an agency and I loved it. I sat down with them, we talked about who is your ideal recruit, who are you trying to talk to, and we really got clear on like what does it look like to work here? And they had great opinions on this. They go, we're busy. We don't want people that want to come here, want to come to this agency and think that we're not going to do anything. We need people
Yeah.
who are passionate. They want to help their community. They want to go to calls. They want to do, police work. And they said, so we need to get that out in this video. And we worked really hard to get that messaging consistent so that could be the case because you want to get the right fit. I don't know what it costs today, but in the early 2000s, I was told by an agency that I was interviewing with that it cost $30,000 to equip that a police officer. This is equipment and training and police academy, $30,000. This was early 2000s, probably cost 60 today, if not more. So I think also you want to do it right to your point, because, I think that's where the bitterness comes from the job hopping is the money that was lost. But if you set yourself up from success in the beginning, you're not going to lose that money.
Yes. And I feel like I've used this phrase or this analogy before on
Mhm.
podcasts. It's like business dating because, right, everybody can understand the analogy or the process of dating. Who
Mhm.
wants to go and basically start a relationship with a company and they're told, oh, this is our culture, these are our benefits, this is how every day is going to be. And then you get into it and you're like, this isn't what I signed up for. Like, I thought I
Mhm.
was dating this person, but this is not who I thought I was signing up for. I mean, it's you don't want a short-term thing. You want that long-term partnership.
Yeah.
And by doing that research beforehand, understanding who that target persona is that you want for that position, you're setting yourself up for success and you're more likely to get that person to come to you. You have to think of it as investing in them, right? You don't know them yet, but you know that they're out there and you want to show them that yes, by signing up with us, working with us, we're going to value you just as much as you value us.
Yeah, no, I think that's yeah, no, 100%. 100%. I know that one thing I wanted to follow up on too, because I know we were kind of getting off, the beaten path here a little bit 'cause in the sense of you and I were like, let's jump in and talk about this. We did,
Yes.
we talked about social media, but I do want to make sure we give some like actionable tips because this is all great information. I think these are all things to consider. I just wanted to, outside of the types of social media channels. I did want to mention, the types of content that can be pushed out. Obviously, we should touch on that. And I'd also like to touch on, just your thoughts on consistency and messaging and branding and just, if an agency maybe they have a channel or maybe they're thinking about starting one at some point, I want to talk with you too before we jump off about, where they should start. So why don't we actually start there? Let's start with
Yes, I think that's the
yeah. So,
visuals.
so yeah, so let's start there. If say you're talking to somebody who is a public safety agency or even a city, this would apply to them, and they want to start a social media channel. Maybe they have one already, maybe they don't have any. Where do they start? Like what do you start to plan this out?
I would recommend I would agree with you. I think Facebook is the best.
Hmm.
If you want, I mean, Instagram and Facebook are connected, but I think Facebook is, without doing the research for that specific agency, is
Hmm.
where you're going to get, I think, a lot of the follows and the likes because Facebook is that demographic of early middle age to late age.
Hmm.
And those are the type of people that are going to probably want to follow a police department to get that community content, see what they're doing, support their local PD. But when you do that, making sure that your logo or your graphic is consistent and is representative of you. And if you think about the idea of even just a police car in the black and white, right? The
Hmm.
reason all police cars look the same is so you can identify that it's a police car. That's a
Hmm.
logo. It's a logo on wheels, right?
Hmm.
So by having your agency have some sort of, hey, everywhere that we are being represented, this is the graphic, the logo that we're going to use. Because you and I talked beforehand about sometimes PDs they use the city graphic, they use this graphic over here, that graphic.
Hmm.
No one knows who what what I can't I have the stutters. They're not going to know. So
Yeah.
by being consistent, then you use it on all those various platforms so that when you do start a new platform, they're like, oh, I know them. That's my local police department. I'm going to follow them. But without that consistency, there's no people are going to be confused. And
Yeah.
that goes for, fire, SWAT. I just recently did a logo design for a SWAT team in Indiana because they wanted a graphic just for them. So when they
Mhm.
have their gear, all of their stuff, social media, that it all looks the same because they get it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's great advice. I think what you want it like the way I see it is if somebody's following you on Facebook and then you have a Instagram and a LinkedIn, they should be able to go to your Instagram and your LinkedIn, see that same logo and be like, "Yep, that's them." Because to your point, especially if you're a city police department, village police department, you could be, the village of Somerville. You could be Somerville PD. And I don't know, I'm actually pulling that from a Ghostbuster movie,
I love it.
but
I love it.
the reason I want to use that is because like there could be Somerville PD or Somerville FD in Ohio. There could be Somerville PD and FD in Kansas. There could be one in Texas. And
Yeah.
what could end up happening is you may have an Instagram, but then or I mean a Facebook, but then you don't have an Instagram, and then say Texas has a Facebook and an Instagram, and then somebody might follow the Texas one and think it's you because your logos haven't been consistent on other platforms, and then they're getting the wrong information. Like something, they might post that there's a missing dog, and then they're trying to share it, and then everyone's like, "What is this? There's a missing dog in our area?" Because it's not, or a found dog rather, even, and it's just not relevant. And then the problem ends up becoming, you know, um, they're getting that information and they're thinking it's you, and that could end up causing a problem down the road when you're trying to get out vital information.
And at the
Um,
end of the day, if you don't know who you are, how am I supposed to know?
yeah.
If you can't nail down a logo or a graphic or an identity, a visual identity for yourself,
Hmm.
then you just seem scatterbrained.
Oh yeah.
And people then that builds that trust. You have no trust because if you can't be consistent in even just as simple as a graphic,
Yeah.
people subconsciously do equate that to like, okay, well, they can't even take the time to be consistent. What makes me think that what they're telling me is consistent or true?
It doesn't make you look as professional. I mean, if you look at, like, to your point, like bigger brands, if you look at Apple, if you look at Starbucks, if you look at Vitamix, Sherwin-Williams, I mean, any of these big brands, if you look at them, they're going to be consistent across all these channels. Now, I know, a public safety agency or a city, or any type of government entity is not necessarily Apple, but people look at their local cities and their public safety agencies like these big brands. They perceive them to be that way. This is a professional organization. It's a government organization, and they assume there's going to be consistency. So you already have that. It's kind of nice. Like, I feel like a lot of businesses have to build that perception, but because you are a government entity right out the gate, you get that perception. So it's best to keep it.
Yes, I
Yeah.
agree.
So okay, they picked the platform, they have their graphic. I guess in terms of, like, content, I know we talked a little bit about messaging earlier, but an audience, but what would you say would be the next step in your eyes in terms of, okay, now we have to figure out what type of content we want to share?
Yeah, I think it goes to our last conversation, strategy and
Mhm.
looking at your staff. Where are your strong points and who's available and willing? You don't want to force anyone to do social media
Mhm.
because it's just going to turn out bad, just like it's going to turn out bad if you force someone to go to a trade show and stand in a booth.
Yeah.
So understanding who, where your strengths are. If you are a slower department, then maybe you focus on educational content of, hey, this is how we do some of our trainings. This is how we take care of our vehicles. Things like that, on top
Mhm.
of adding in, there's a pole down at this intersection. We got it back up, like you were saying before.
Mhm.
Start out with simple messaging. And then as you grow and you get into it and you get used to it, then you can start adding maybe community events like, hey, this is officer so and so out somewhere. But really, it depends on that agency. What is your bandwidth?
Yeah.
You don't want to bite off more than you can chew. And like you said before, no agency is created equal. They all have different head count, different strengths, different
Mhm.
issues. They might have more crime versus DUIs versus, I don't know, cars being hit by deer. There's some
Yeah.
PDs that they just have a lot of wildlife issues.
Yeah.
So what considering making a plan before you go into it.
Yeah, I think where that goes, like, for that, in my opinion, like the way we could kind of coach our clients, and I think this fits with them. It's, I always say, think of it like buckets, like content buckets. So, I always tell them, try and pick three buckets at the very least, right? So maybe bucket one is educational, bucket two is community involvement, and then bucket three is just like, maybe it's, if it's not educational, maybe it's just stuff that you're putting out that's like advisories, right? So, like, educational content. There's a great resource. NHTSA, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, has a website that police departments can pull information from. I mean, fire departments can too. Really, anybody can, but they have a marketing page. And on that page, you could pull all that stuff that you see, click it or ticket, drive sober, get pulled over. So that could be that educational content, because they have stats in there and graphs, and they're like, did you know in 2023 there was X number of OVI arrests? And these things are also important to, like, I find a lot of stuff on there. even consistent, I think, with like um, you know, traffic. This is a great thing for, I think, fire departments too, like with the seatbelt stuff, like traffic accidents, fatalities. But also, I found, I think locally, you can even look at like other organizations that you can support. Like here in Cleveland, we have a local like nonprofit that's all dedicated to like bike riding. I think it's Bike Ride Cleveland. And so like they put out content. You can share their content, and that's
Yeah.
helpful for them. And then you're sharing biking content. The APL puts out content for animals, like not leaving them in your vehicle in the winter or in the
I,
summer, or leaving them outside. You could share that stuff. Um, to your
yeah,
point,
I
the
was just gonna
wildlife
say,
thing.
yeah, I was just gonna say the same thing about, general safety tips.
Yeah.
Check your fire smoke alarm. Is your seatbelt in working good condition? Do you have security systems, like general safety info? Because then you're becoming more of that thought leader and building that trust of, hey, we're just not out here to show the bad stuff. We're actually trying to make you safer in all parts of your life because that's what we stand for.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so that's that educational
Yeah, bucket.
component. And I think that that's great and like to have that. But then also that third bucket, we're talking about community involvement. That could be, Halloween. You got, agency, police department, fire departments out there for Halloween, like making sure people are staying safe, patrolling, having the ambulance out there, participating in community events. Maybe there's a 4th of July parade and get pictures of that and share those things. And that's that community involvement. Here in Cleveland, fire department does this really cool thing. They're called like ice cream socials where they get ice cream from different ice cream manufacturers.
I
Like,
was in town. I used to go to those. Those were always great.
yeah, so like that's just a great thing to share. You could share like, you don't have to worry. Some people get worried about sharing pictures, especially if it's a kid event. You don't have to share pictures of kids. Like, you could just like take a photo of like the table full of ice cream and being like getting ready to like welcome the community today at the firehouse. And it's just a neat thing that you can share that's like community, outreach and that. But then you can also share stuff from the community perspective, from the city. The city's going to share stuff. The fire department, the police department, they all share their own stuff if they have channels. You can share those things. Neighboring cities, you could share their things. Maybe your neighboring police department did something that was really cool and you want to share that because, your residents are going to be going to the cities next door, and
Yeah.
so that's that. I feel like that's that community involvement piece I think they can pull from.
Oh yeah. And I think another, or go ahead because I have another thought. I don't
Oh,
want to.
oh no, 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 that's all I had for that one. I was going to go to the third bucket. So you can
Yeah.
go. Yeah.
No, no, no. Go to the third bucket.
Oh, okay, yeah. So the third bucket I was saying is like more like information that needs to get out. So that could be like there's an accident on, First Street and whatever, like I don't know, Daisy Street. And like you want to make sure that like avoid that area until crews have this cleaned up. There's power outage in the area. If you're having power outage issues, please call the illuminating company. Here's their phone number. So it's that type of information. Found dog, like we talked about, missing
Yeah.
dog. Maybe even something where, say a kid goes missing, but it's not an Amber Alert situation yet, but you know that they could potentially be in the neighboring city or in the city. You could push that out like police are out looking for this, juvenile that answers by the name of this and looks like this. If you find this person, can you please, contact the police department? They got lost. We think they got lost. So something like that.
Yeah. No, I think that all of those are very good buckets, and
Mhm.
definitely you could start with any one of those or all three. Pick a
Mhm.
day of the week for each of those.
Yeah.
The other thought that I had was that it's equally important that when you do any social media channel that you engage, right? You
Yes.
had mentioned resharing other people's content. It's equally as important to post as it is to respond to comments.
Hmm.
And if you are an agency and you're on the fence about doing Facebook or any other channel because you're worried about negative comments or people being mean, if you have on your page in the about section or like a policy, they call it a living room social media policy, where basically it's saying, on this page, everyone's going to be kind and nice to each other.
Hmm.
Unkind, negative comments will be deleted. You are allowed to delete them.
Hmm.
Every brand, every business has people that don't like them, but I
Hmm.
don't think that that is enough of a negative for an agency not to do a channel. I think that you just need to make sure that you have someone monitor whoever's posting and engage, because that's what people love. I love when I comment on a business or a brand and I make a comment on their post and then they respond or they like it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that it's super nerdy, but everybody feels that way.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's equally important, that they need to make sure that they have the time to also engage when people comment or reshare, saying thank you for resharing, or yeah, thanks for the comment, because that is important.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think, well, and I do think along those lines, I will say if you are a government entity, if you don't have a social media policy yet, check with your law director, check with your prosecutor, depending on who you have actually working on these things, check with your mayor. If you're an officer or firefighter, check with your chiefs. Make sure there's policy in place. I know a lot of agencies had to put one in place because of, wanting to go on social media. And all it does is it's similar to that living room policy. It can mirror that. So that way, when you do delete something, not only is it on that like living room policy, but it could also, because it's unfortunately it's 2024 and people can get upset and then try and cause an issue by it and say, listen, we have a social media policy. Comments that are of this nature are to be removed, documented and removed, usually what ends up happening. So taking a photo of it and removing it so you have like evidence of that. And then if somebody complains, you can say, if somebody says, no, I said something really nice and they removed it, you can say, no, no, we said we removed, mean comments. It's in our policy and here it is saved. So having something that like, the legal part of that covered. Make sure you do that before you do get started. That way you're not getting in trouble, getting your agency in trouble. Um,
And that
but
goes far for
yeah.
also a employment agency policy that's
Hmm.
separate from, like, the living room policy is for interacting on the actual platform, whereas I'm sure, and you probably know more about this, Bill, than I do because you're actually a cop, that there's policies in place for the agency itself saying
Yeah.
this is how, if you're allowed to have personal social media, if you're not, if you are an officer and you're operating, if you're posting on the agency page, these are the do's, these are the don'ts, what's allowed, what's not
Yeah.
allowed. If an officer leaves the agency, you know those types of things,
Yeah.
that's always good, because I'm all about covering your butt, and
Yeah.
so those are good
Yeah.
things to have.
Yeah, that's definitely the thing you want to check on. I think those are the things, a lot of those things are what the policies touch on and, who's going to be posting, who has access, how, when's access taken away, do they have to be approved? So these are all things you definitely want to check on prior to getting started. I will say though, I wanted to really touch on this before we jumped off, and it was, you know, why is this important? I know we touched a little bit on the recruitment piece, like why this is important for recruitment to have a presence. But one thing I just really wanted to throw out there was, outside of just community engagement, I think community engagement is huge. I think the ability to be able to have that community-oriented policing back that I feel like isn't, there used to be budgets and people that were designated to that. I don't necessarily know that so much that is any, at least for smaller agencies, that is today. But having the community engagement, I think, is huge. Growing your following, whether, we talked about this prior to jumping on here, whether it's your residents that are following you, surrounding residents, residents, maybe in another like other part of the county, when you have that presence and you get that following, the thing that's amazing is, when you gain followers on social media, you get a lot of people that are 2 degrees of separation away from one another. And that's the benefit, I feel like, when you need to get information out quickly, whether that be road closures, whether that be a manhunt, whether that be, just trying to find somebody who's missing, or, whatever it is that you're trying to do, it's all about safety. You know, it's important that your surrounding communities know that these things are happening because they go through your community. It's
Yeah.
important that the following that maybe is on the other side of the county, like those people, see it, because though it may not apply to them, they may go, oh, I'm not going over there, but I have like, 10 friends that live over there. Let me reshare this. So let me send it to them. And so you're getting that information out at a faster rate, and it's really helping you do your job. So I feel like it's the community engagement and the positive perception. It's getting that information out to do your job better. And then it's also just like we said, like that recruitment, like giving people this idea of what your agency's about and hiring better like recruits and cadets to come in because they know who you are and what you stand for and what you do.
Yeah. And they want to be a part of it. Let's be real. People that go into public service, they do it because it's in their heart, it's in their soul. I mean, most times that's why they seek out that type of work. So they want to be a part of what you're doing. Show what you do.
And I also think to that point, like, people see what you're all about. And I've always said that, in a career field, especially law enforcement, but you could just say government in general, but law enforcement I know takes a big hit on this. A career path that is constantly under fire. When you have a solid social media channel and you're putting out great content of your officers interacting with the community, your officers and community members like having positive experiences, it makes it a lot harder for a news agency to come in and start saying these negative things off the cuff, like just right off the cuff, like, oh, they did this because this is the type of agency they are, because it doesn't support that anymore. It makes them as a journalist have to do their job even better because they can't just come in and say this agency, they don't care. These guys are a bunch of cowboys and they're not a good agency. It's like, because it doesn't, you could say that.
It's the perception versus the reality. The reality is they're a good agency. They're giving you social proof that they are. So whatever you perceive of them, you can't go against the reality.
When they say that type of thing, like, hey, these guys are all a bunch of cowboys and they don't care about anybody. And then to your point, you go to the Facebook page and there they are passing out ice cream bars and playing basketball with kids. And you know what I mean? And they're helping people, like giving people information about dogs, like walking their dogs and like helping people fix their bikes. And same thing with fire, like these guys that, they didn't make it to the call because they don't, they're lazy or whatever. Like maybe, maybe you get something ends up happening, the ambulance doesn't get there in time. And, the news agency's trying to push negligence. And then here's this fire department, and they're opening up the doors to do chicken barbecues for the neighborhood. And they're out there helping, doing stuff with kids for trick or treat. And they're helping people put car seats in their cars. Like it just makes them do their job so much. It just makes them have to do more digging. And I think that's key because it's easy to say that and there's no proof, like you're saying. But when there's proof, it requires more work on the other person's end. Yeah. So, yes.
I completely agree. That's a very, very big factor. Yeah.
I know this episode is way longer than we were thinking. And I know we went on a big tangent in the beginning, but I just think it's very valuable. I think it's important. I know a lot of agencies are getting social media channels, but I still think there's a lot of hesitancy. If they don't have channels, there's hesitancy. If they do have channels, there's hesitancy on posting like they have it. But you see they posted like a month ago, and then before that they posted 3 months before. And I think what I'm really wanting to get across, I feel like what we were talking more about was just, get out there and start posting. You can be very specific. You can plan these things out, but just get out there and do it. Just make sure it's, in line with your policy.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but
it's unknown of starting it. So.
Yeah. Yeah. But Jess, I just want to say thank you again for coming on and for the conversation. This was exciting. I'm looking forward to having you on again. Maybe we'll talk have another topic to talk about like this, or like maybe next time you're here in person, we'll do it, or maybe we'll just do it over Zoom because this is fun too.
Yeah, it works either way. I thank you so much for having me back on again. I always enjoy our chats. We go down rabbit holes and they always end up longer than what we planned.
But it's good information. It's important,
It is. And I love this industry, and being able to provide information to help raise that, perception and, help agencies is what I love to do. So.
Well, if people want to learn more about you, where can they go to do that?
They can go to designpod.studio is my website. And then also on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, Design Pod Studio.
There you go. So go out there, make sure you give Jess a follow, see what she's got going on with her accounts and who she's been helping out. And then for those of you that are watching and listening, if you liked these past 2 episodes, and if you feel that like this content for public safety is something that you'd like maybe broken out a little bit more, we'd love to do this stuff. I feel like a little bit more and talk about it. So let me know down in the comments, or send me a message or an email and just let me kind of know what's going on. But Jess, thanks for coming on, and we'll see you soon.
Sounds good.
Thanks for listening to Watch Time. We hope you guys enjoyed today's episode.
And remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes.
And if you want your question answered on our podcast, go to flexmediacle.com/watchtime.